Hi.
Hi.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, everybody. Yes, welcome, Facebook, YouTube, and for the first time, LinkedIn viewers.
LinkedIn. That's right.
LinkedIn.
We made our way into LinkedIn live broadcast as
Yeah,
well. Really
yes.
growing.
Yeah, we hope it's going.
We're really growing, I said.
Yes. Oh,
And
is that what you
we
said?
also hope it's going. The subconscious speaking.
Okay, I'm just gonna. You know what? This whole, you know, we really got it down to the gun, didn't we?
Why are you exposing us like that?
Oh,
Very
sorry. Hey, I'm just being honest. That's our brand. We're honest.
correct.
We're human.
Yes, we are. We were flying in front of the camera.
We're literally flying on the seat of our pants about 2 minutes, well, within seconds of the show.
Within seconds of the show. Yeah, I even had to ask for a couple extra seconds to grab a mint.
Yeah. Grab a mints. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, Angela, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Angela. Welcome back. Good to see you. Welcome, everyone. Shall we get started?
Absolutely. It's time to get started. The show today is about effortless um, doing.
Right. Do you want to tell us a little bit where the inspiration came from?
Yes. Well, thank you for asking. The so last week I started a course with Michael Neal called Effortless Success.
Right.
And I know it's something that both of us have been, we're starting, not starting, we've been coaching for a while, and we're growing a population of followers and various other things. We're building a business, and there's lots of different things that are going on in the background. And when this course came up, and then I started reading some of the things that the course had on offer, I thought, well, this is just a no-brainer because it's just part of what we're doing right now. We're experiencing this right now. Not so much the effortless piece, but we're certainly right.
Talking about.
Well, what we're doing, we're doing right, and 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 so anyways, I last week was about he's got it split up into three different segments, and last week was about effortless being, and this
Mm,
week it's about effortless doing.
mm, okay.
And the insights and what's been resonating has just been going like off the chart. um, and I've been so receptive to this course, which is probably which is helping. But it's just mirroring about like the various different things. Like our to-do list keeps getting bigger. Like it's like we keep finding things that and which is great because as we are discovering this, right, we're putting in the list, but we're really taking it one step at a time. And and so there is a bit of a process behind it, but at times, I don't know how you feel, but let me ask you this question, and I'd encourage our audience to also answer this question in the chat by typing into the chat. What does effortless mean to you?
Mhm.
Because we got to start with that definition. I have one, and you can certainly look it up into the dictionary also. But what is your experience of effortless? What does it mean to you to be effortless?
Well, to me, effortless when it refers to doing is not necessarily lack of doing, lack of effort. It's the feeling of it being effortless, right?
Mm,
I would even say that you could like compare that to flow. When you're doing things that you're in the flow,
right.
that happens a lot for creative people. For me, like when I'm designing, I'm creating something and I'm really in the flow of things.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm not making an effort or I'm not doing, it just doesn't feel like doing because it feels effortless, even though I am getting a lot done,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so ideally I think that's a place to always bring yourself back to when you're creating something to be able to reach and achieve that state of being, because the doing doesn't feel like doing, it feels like you're flowing with it.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And in sports and in various other things, like even in in as first responders, we talked about the flow state, like being in the zone. Um,
Right.
and I just noticed Don put something up here too. Doing things without having your emotional brakes on.
Right. Exactly. Well, I mean, because what does make, that's such a good point. Right? That's a really good thing to point to, is the emotional piece. Is the emotional piece that makes it feel like an effort, makes it feel like, starts the rehearsing and the chatter and the questioning and the resenting and the getting, frustrated by it, or right. It's when your emotions kick in and become a part of it, uh, that starts to happen, and it feels more effortful. Is that even a word? But it feels like you're putting more effort into it, because you're not only just doing it, but now you're fighting up against yourself and your emotions and what.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sorry, I'm choking on my words. The what Don points to is one of the descriptions of the zone or being in flow is no thought. So while there's always effort, like you pointed out to, there's always effort. Like you can't get anything done without effort. But there's certainly a difference between having a whole lot of thinking added to that effort versus having no thinking to that effort.
Right.
And part of what I have suffered from is the habit of overthinking.
Right.
Now, does anybody else ever suffer from overthinking?
You
put
made
it
me,
put it put a yes in the chat if you want to um, play along.
I think it's something that creative people suffer a lot from, right? Because that creative piece can become a double-edged sword, because there's, with creativity, there's infinite possibilities, right? You can go in so many different directions, right? And at some point, you can really take that to an extreme where, like, you can't stop yourself, right? So that sometimes for me has applied in other things in my life, because I always feel like, oh, there's another way to look at this. There's another way to do this. And what if I did it this way or this way? What would it look like if I did
Yeah,
it this way?
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And that can really easily slip into overthinking. Like, and I do think, and I think I actually spoke about this last week, that coaching me today was able to step in and like stop the designer in me and say, okay, you've done a lot of thinking and a lot of trying. Where are we going to put a stop to this and just do it,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And it
yeah,
was a really nice fine balance between the two, because even just doing things doesn't work. And I actually love that the conversation is going a little bit in that direction, because I think some people take that to an extreme, right? I'm just going to get things done in like 20 minutes, I'm just going to do it. And then, okay, you just did it and it's filled with typos.
yeah,
Sure, go ahead and do it, right? That's not something that I like to put out that way, right? So it's a fine, but to me, it's in the balance that, like, there's harmony between those two things,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And that's what Michael Neal talks about, is the dance or the finessing between, the knowing when too much doing or not enough doing. Like where are you? Where
Right.
so there's this thing called the sweet spot, right? And that's where the zone lies. It lies in that sweet spot.
Yeah.
And but it but what I point to in my coaching is it's all about the feeling. So if the feeling is like struggle, then you're probably pointing yourself in the wrong direction. Like effort putting effort into something and having struggle attached to it is optional. It's an option. Right? It's like we talk and joke about I have one client about doing dishes.
Mm.
He's like, I just hate doing dishes. Well, what if you just did dishes? What do you mean? Well, just did dishes and not think about it. Like just do it. What difference would that make then for you?
Well, I mean, I think it is that simple, right?
Yeah.
It's not that simple when the mind takes over and you
Yes.
can't just do the dishes, right? When the rehearsing, the habitual thought pattern kicks in without a choice there, right? It just kicks in because that's how your mind rehearses things. That's
Right.
where it goes,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So doing this work, the mindset work and rewiring beliefs, like, and that's another thing that I often point to when people get started on this work is that don't look at everything that is difficult for you or challenging for you in this moment as something that you have to tackle that's going to take 21 to 60 days to rewire, because once you start rewiring some of that thinking, it's contagious. It's going
Hmm.
on its own apply to the rest of it, right? So if you find yourself that you can't just do the dishes because you keep rehearsing and ruminating the things in your life that are bothering you, that are not the way you want, or you resent the fact that you're doing the dishes, there's a bigger work to be done there, right? There's something else there um, that it's pointing to,
It,
right?
it's pointing to and what the course is offering, and this is, I guess it's a plug a little bit for his course, is we have this idea, we have a thing, we create something, right? Whether it's a design, like you have an inspiration for a new design, let's say, or for me, I have an idea around something that I want to photograph, or some kind of something, um, something creative. So it's an idea, it's a thing. What we habitually end up doing innocently is we create a problem around it.
Yeah.
We turn it into a problem. Well, if I did this, then it's like, like, so I find myself in this hamster wheel of overthinking the processes, rather than, and I like what you talked about right in the beginning about, okay, so, and I'm adding words to it, but if I want to create something on a canvas, let's say, it's like, okay, this is what I have in my head. The only way I'm really going to see if this really works is by doing it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw some paint on there, and oh, okay, that didn't work. So great. So we can't, as much as I would love to predict outcomes,
Hmm.
I can't.
Well,
You know,
9 times out of 10, you can't predict how that paint is going to land on the canvas until
no,
you do it,
until
right?
you do it, and
And
then
when
then it's the thinking process kicks in, right?
yeah,
Whether,
I don't like it, let me try to throw it this way
yeah,
instead.
yeah,
Let me do it with more speed or whatever it is. And so that doing it that first time and not liking it is teaching you how to do it differently, right? How to try even different ways,
well, different, right?
right? But we often spend a lot of time ahead of time
Yes,
questioning all of that and
yes.
really like talking ourselves often out of even trying because, well, it's not going to work anyway, right? Trying to predict things, which is something that we often do with everything, right? We future project everything, right?
Yeah. Well,
And
it part of it is keeps us safe, kind of a thing, right? It's part of our survival piece, right? We want to get it right the first time, because we might be judged, we might be all sorts of different things. Don wrote to us. It's like Abraham Hicks says, you have to get ahead of the momentum. It takes a while to slow a train going full speed, but you can slow it faster if you start earlier. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and and like you can't really slow down a train you haven't started
Well,
running, right?
and that's what we're kind of talking about is we also have, at least me, anticipate how much effort this is going to take for me to get this thing done. So
Right,
I'm projecting the effort that I will need,
right.
and I guarantee you it has never been as much as I've created for myself.
It's always in the thinking that
Yeah,
the gets created. The
Yes.
feeling of this feels heavy, this
Yeah.
feels like a burden, this I feel resentful of all the time that it's taking. It's a rehearsing of all those things that it's
Yeah.
creating
Yeah.
that feeling of effort, right? Because truly, even with the biggest task, if you really just focus on that one step you're taking in that moment and you're present with it, you're shifting out of that thinking, you're shifting out of all the things that you're focusing on that create that heaviness,
Yeah.
right? And you're just doing,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
doing is required. Again, no one has ever created things materially in this world just sitting on a
What?
meditation pillow. If you can do it, please come on the show and tell us how, right? And I'm someone who meditates every day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
And that, and that's important also distinction. And and we're welcoming the comments. This is great. The is we're always, believe it or not, we're always in action,
always,
right?
yeah,
So whether you're sitting on the couch or in your garage painting, you're always doing something. Sometimes, but though we again are thinking around, well, I'm just sitting on the couch, right? Um, doesn't produce results. But that's that sweet spot between, do I talk myself out of doing something, or do I do something out of in spite of what I'm thinking?
right. So, I feel like, and the same is true when you're sleeping. Your body truly is always in movement. Your heart's always breathing, it is always
Well,
beating,
sleeping is an action. Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You're
Yeah,
always in movement. And the same is true for the brain,
yeah.
right? Even when you're sleeping, you're dreaming. And there was this, I heard this like little, I was watching a little video on Instagram the other day. I think it was Jay Shetty that was speaking to someone in the audience that asked him a question about, doubting yourself and how, like, how do I bring myself to do things? And I loved his response. He responded, and I may be completely misquoting him, but this is what was left with me. He was like, the mind always needs to obsess over something. You can either obsess over all the things that are not serving you, that are preventing you from doing the thing that you want to do,
Yeah,
or you can just obsess over the thing that you want to create.
yeah, yeah,
And I love that because it's so true, right? You
yeah.
can obsess on all the reasons why not, all the reasons that make this difficult, all the reasons that may or may not, create struggle or like eat up into your time and space and, like resent, someone who's not showing up the way you want, or you can just obsess over what it is that you want to create,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And stay with that feeling. So I really, really loved the way he put that. It really resonated with me. And it kind of reminds, seems to be really fitting with what we were just discussing, right? We're
hmm,
always in movement. The point is not to like not do. I mean, that's boring. I
yeah,
mean, of course, I could enjoy not doing, laying on a sofa and just watching Netflix every now and then, relaxing, right? Turning my brain off. But you're still not turning your brain off. You're still processing what you're watching. You're
Well, how
still
many times are you Netflixing going, oh, I should be doing something? Like you can't even enjoy watching a movie without overthinking,
right.
the process. I got stuff to do. I can't be sitting here. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
you could and just and enjoy it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I like that. I like what you just said, because again, each one of those thoughts comes with a feeling.
Yes, exactly.
And when you're in tune to the feeling, that's when you can start to, oh, it's that hot and cold game. I'm going away from something that I'm desiring, and that gets too cold, right? So it's just your invitation to relook at it. And when you notice that it's starting to feel effortless, or less thinking on it, then it also has a feeling to it, right?
Absolutely.
It's a more natural feeling.
It's more focusing on what you want, right?
Yeah.
What makes things effortless is not just focusing on what you want and what you're accomplishing, but also focusing on how that makes you feel, right? So if you
Hmm.
always stay true to being in that space of doing things that you find enjoyable, or when they're not enjoyable, like I quickly read the comment there about mopping the floor. That may not be enjoyable, right?
No, well, actually, with the way he started it, sorry to interrupt you, Fatih, but it was two lines of a chat. He said, but then we all have those moments where we are cleaning the kitchen, and then we do the recycling, and then we mop the floor, and it was totally effortless. And so, how does that happen? And that's it's a good drug. It's mixing chemicals, bleach and chlorine, but the don't do that, by the way. The but you see, that's the exploration that I invite people to look at.
Right,
Right? I can offer you a great explanation,
right,
uh, but think about that moment in yourself. What was? Did you notice anything different? Did you notice how less thinking you might have been doing in the moment? Right? That might be a clue of what's really going on. So there's
right,
a fundamental difference between doing something and then doing something with a lot of baggage attached to it.
right, right. Yeah, and I love what you just invited him to do, and everyone, right? When something does happen for you that really works out well, that does feel effortless, just stop and notice. It's the same thing as when you have a thought that doesn't serve you. That's how we help people notice and rewire that thinking, is by
Mhm.
stopping and noticing what is happening here and how can I rewire this. The same is true for when something does work for you. Pause and notice, what about this situation, this day, what preceded this action allowed me to be in this space? Is it my state of mind? Is it I went to the gym before this? Did I eat a good meal? Something really good happened in my life? Like, you can only answer that, right? Because I could tell you what it is for me,
Yeah,
but I can never tell you what it is for you because
yeah.
it's subjective.
It's
Everyone's very,
all subject. Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And we're all individuals, right? We're
Absolutely.
all we're all
We
individuals having an individual experience of what's happening in front of us.
Absolutely. I mean, some people get in the flow by jumping off mountains, right? And some people do it by designing clothes, right? So we're not all going to achieve that state of being in the same way. It's a very
No,
subjective
no,
process.
and that's part of the inside out is it's not the activity that gets you into the flow state. It's actually your mindset. It's
Yeah.
you dropping the baggage, dropping the feelings behind what you're doing, all the thinking that went into the doing. Because and this is one thing that the invitation was from Michael the last couple of days was to was to notice the transition.
Right.
Notice when notice when it it actually flipped to effortless. When you finally, like he said, one of the first things this week on Monday, he said, make a list of all the things that you have on your list of to do that you have come up with that there's some struggle to it, right? Or else
Mhm.
you'd be doing it. So, I put a lot of,
All of those that you avoid, you
oh
mean?
yeah, well, it's like like finishing my book that I started a couple of years ago, eating more healthier, um, like all these little things that you kind of personally have put on your to-do list. One was to finally make a decision on a really uh, dropping something that wasn't working well, and it, all the extra, every one of them had all this extra thinking attached to it.
Right. Right.
Right? So he invited us to look at that list, and he says, I'm going to stop the workshop right now, and I want you to just do one of them for 5 minutes, whatever it is, and then report back." And it was amazing the people that reported back, and even in my experience of, just getting up and doing, like
Mm.
the invitation just to go out and do,
So what
and
did
we're
you
doing it for 5 minutes.
difference for you then?
Well, the biggest difference was I couldn't believe how much in 5 minutes I actually got done.
Right. Right. But what made you actually get up and do it?
Well, that was an interesting thing because you could easily point to, well, he told us to, but he he comically came back and said, I am not a taskmaster. I gave you the invitation to. I didn't tell you to. I gave you an invitation to explore just doing something.
Right.
So it was totally up to you whether you wanted to or not. I was not the police. Like he wasn't sitting around saying, you know what, if you don't do this, something else is going to happen, or you must, right? So it was really, so the invitation was there, and I could, reflecting back, I dropped the thought and I just did it.
Right. But like I guess what comes up for me is that there was a level of trust in the process, right? And
Yes,
a,
oh, definitely on my part. On my
right.
part,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And a
all with me.
commitment to
Yeah,
to to the work, right?
yeah,
Commitment to doing the work and trusting that there's a process in place that may not always make sense to you in the moment, but you gave it a try, right? And I have the feeling that that in on itself was helpful in getting dropping the thinking,
well,
right?
and yeah, I mean, the fact I was in this workshop, and I was sort of committed to learning something, or getting some fresh and new perspective on something, which I ultimately did. And like Don said, it's the do not try, just do, or explore,
Mhm.
from Yoda. And that's what was on offer, was to, you know what, let's just assume for a second I don't know a damn thing. That I have no idea, this is going to take forever, this is going to take long. And everybody that spoke up, um, on the in the workshop, all had very similar experiences. It was nothing what they thought it was going to be.
Mm.
And the experience was totally effortless. Like
In a sense, you're putting that by putting the trust on the outside, you're now relieving yourself of the pressure of the overthinking and
Yeah, exactly, yeah,
right.
yeah.
So I want to go to this question that Don asked: why is getting started so difficult? Well, it's so difficult because of the chatter, because when you're busy within a conflict, right? You're busy in a conflict within your head. All your energy is going in managing that
Yeah,
conflict, that
yeah,
inner conflict, right?
yeah,
So oftentimes we don't take action on things because there's conflicting agendas within us, right? There's a part of us that's benefiting from you not doing the thing that you would like to do, right?
hmm,
Whether the benefit is to have more free time, whether the benefit is, I don't know, saving money, whatever it is, right? Like there's always a benefit. It's protecting you from something, right? And then there's this debate inside of you that's going on, this conflict, right? You really want to get it done, but then something's really not, you're not really taking action towards it. You go and like take a nap instead, or you go and like, you go out with your friends instead. There's like conflicting agendas, and there's a lot of busyness in the background of your.
hmm.
That's a one answer to this question that has probably a billion different answers because it's very subjective. Depends on what it is that you can get started on, right? But oftentimes there always is a benefit for you within the not doing, right? And
Or the perception that there's a
or,
benefit.
or
Yeah,
the perception that there's a benefit,
yeah,
or the not being able to fully commit to doing it because you haven't really fully looked at the benefit. You haven't really fully even realized that you're benefiting from the not doing, right?
and again, the exploration is noticing differences, right? So what is the difference between something you're having difficulty starting, and something that you just seem to just do anyways?
Yeah.
What are those differences? For me, one is, well, I kind of like doing it. Like I have a
Mm-hmm.
desire to do it. I
Mm-hmm.
When I'm, um, you know doing it, I get lost. So I have I see the benefit of that doing it. I don't see the benefit of doing the dishes. It's thinking of
No, but sometimes
I'm
it can,
using dishes as only as a metaphor, right, of everything else that might be out there.
but sometimes it also has to do with the level of effort, initial effort that would take for you to
Well,
do it.
that
Maybe,
was the experiment,
right? Maybe it's challenging you. Maybe you're not an expert in it, and it takes a
but
lot of.
that's all perception.
It's all perception because now you're projecting. Oh my God, I'm gonna have to learn all
And
this. What if
precisely,
I do it
precisely.
right? And
Yeah.
right, so you get really lost in the thinking of it. And yes, it is true that some things take more effort than other things. But guess
Well,
what?
as far as doing, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
every single thing can be wired in and become effortless once you do it a few times, right? So oftentimes the things that we just do without thinking, guess what? Are the things that they're like habitual. They have become a habit, or things that we have done over and over and over again, right?
Yeah, and there's a distinction that he brought up today was there are things that are become easy because we've practiced them for a long period of time,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
that's what.
However, what he wants to point to is there's the perception of what effort is needed to get something done that is arbitrary.
Right,
And
right,
we cannot discover what that effort really is until we actually take the first step.
right.
So the invitation is to, I know, like it was like me, like I knew nothing about learning how to play the piano, right? So when I looked at it and I go, well, geez, it took me this many years to learn the guitar, and yes, I got a little bit of this and this, but I can't read notes, and all the extra thinking that was going into me learning the piano. I don't have a piano, I don't have this, all these different things. But when I pointed myself to going, okay, I'm just going to learn the piano. I'm going to learn the piano. What was the first step? Well, I need to go find a piano. And I couldn't believe I'm a big thrift store shopper. So it was like, I walk into, you know, not intending of buying a piano at that time, but lo and behold, there just happened to be one sitting there, and I'm going, I guess so. So but when you started getting into it, like when I started getting into the music part of it, like actually playing, again, the little extra thinking, all these fingers, the two hands, this doing this, multitasking. Let's just try it. Let's just try it. And that was the fundamental shift, is moving from thinking about it, which turned it into a lot more effort, and then just doing it. And then it just flowed. And then you learn from it. Oh, okay, that didn't work. That didn't work. So you get the finessing part. But we're always doing something to contribute to a result. And yes, over time it becomes easier, but we don't have to drag the big effort in the beginning just to get started.
Right.
That
And and his question really points to that. Yes, getting started is probably the hardest part, because that's up until you actually start the experience. All you have is that rehearsal that's happening in your head, that projection,
oh
the
yeah,
ifs and
yeah,
what not, and what it would and should and could, and right.
yeah. Oh,
That
what happens if it succeeds?
stuck in. Huh?
What happens if it succeeds?
Right.
Then what am I going to do?
Right. That's a whole other episode, right? That's a whole other episode. But yeah,
Yeah,
like it's really shifting out of the thinking, the busyness that is behind the action
there
ahead,
you go. I love it. Yeah.
right? Into the actually taking that step, right? Instead of worrying about, I'm taking my first step, what if I fall? Once you take the first step, you actually feel the ground under your feet. You see that you can somehow intuitively balance, and then you start getting it. You put the other
Get
foot
a
down,
feel for it.
and then the
Yeah.
other foot down, right? And now you're busy in the action of doing,
Yeah.
and you no longer feed the thinking that's keeping you busy otherwise and stuck. It's what keeps you
I
stuck.
I guarantee you, none of my children or grandchildren ever overthought walking?
Yeah, because well, they do have one thing on their side. Their brain waves are very different at that age.
Well, they are, and they have less on their brain,
Yeah,
less about, oh, geez, this walking thing, this looks really, really difficult. I'm just a kid. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. I don't have the strength, right? We, as adults, that's how we talk.
we do. Yeah. In fact, like if you have children, you probably, my experience was both my children around 1 years old, they both looked like somebody was beating them up.
Oop,
I was like, I'm not hitting my children. She
yeah,
just fell on her face, or like he just, like hit his head while he tried to take a step, or like
yeah,
jump or whatever, right? Because
yeah,
they're so fearless, they're so in the moment, they're so like they
yeah.
just get up and try again. It's
They're
like,
just, yeah,
you just smacked your face. Are you gonna do it again? Yes, they're gonna do it again because they just want to test and see how far they can go.
yeah,
Because what's missing is the thinking that we're just pointing to.
absolutely. And wouldn't it be great to take everything that we have on our list and be childlike about it?
Be childlike about it with the adult supervision, right? Because we also have that, right? Because
What's
yeah,
that? I'm sorry.
with the adult supervision, because yeah, a child could also cross the street, be so present that they may run in the middle of the street. If you have a boy, hello, to deal with that a lot, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, can we
There's
be
a common sense.
yeah, can we be present like a child and also trust that we know how to stay safe, that we know how to navigate things, that we know how to decide what the next step is,
Yeah.
and continue in the process.
Yeah. And that I always point to is our internal GPS, our internal guide, that that basically is your spidey sense that you know but a lot of things that we're talking about really don't put us in danger, like starting that
No,
book you
no,
want,
right?
or starting a
Like,
business,
there
those
could be
things.
business, decision that you have to make that you drag your feet to make it because you
Yeah,
feel like there's a danger there and like the business not growing or like things, like losing a lot of money. I mean, there can be things that we perceive as threatening our
absolutely.
stability, our
Yeah,
balance,
like if
or
this doesn't succeed, I could be
right,
homeless. All
right.
those different things, all those things. Yeah, I mean there are possibilities, but there's also possibilities that it will succeed. So how do you find out? Well,
Well,
take the next step.
all those things guaranteed they're covered by all the rehearsing,
Yeah,
right? So the problem is that we focus so much on that safety piece, we
yeah,
focus so much on rehearsing all of the what ifs and staying safe, so we're creating a lack of balance, right? We're not able to stay present with what we would give us with the feeling
absolutely.
what
Yeah,
we're trying
and
to
it
right,
just seems easier to just do nothing.
right, right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole uncertainty piece is an interesting topic in itself, right? So yeah.
Nothing ever grows from staying fixed in one place, right?
Well,
Stay
when you think about everything that we have in front of us in this moment, from your iPhone to the lamps to the the pictures on the wall, everything all started with an idea that somebody said, you know what, I'm going to see if this thing works. I'm going to
right,
see if we could do it.
right,
You
and they
know,
had no idea if it did.
they had no idea.
Idea.
And a lot of times, my story that I fell in love with as a teenager was John F. Kennedy, the president
Right.
in the United States back in the 60s, when he said, I'm, my vision is to have a man on the moon in 10 years. That was his mission. At the time he said that, there was no rocket that was ever invented. There was no fuel that was ever invented. Nobody had ever done it before. And so all these, people were going, okay, he wants this, but like, how are we ever going to do this, right? All the extra thinking that went into it, right? And then all of a sudden goes, well, I guess we're going to do it. Let's just see what's the first step. And they came up with the first step, and then the next step, and then all of a sudden it was sort of like, oh my goodness, we're going to put a man on the moon.
Right.
It almost gives people permission. Once you've taken the first step and gotten past it, it's almost like permission now to take the next step and the next step. It's interesting. It's very interesting
Yes,
process.
it really is about getting started.
It is 100%.
Really is about getting started and finding that balance between being cautious and staying safe and staying in the moment and
Look
do
how we did this show.
joy.
Like both, like our beginnings, our humble beginnings.
Do you think
Was
how we started today?
well, but we did, right?
We did.
Like we said, oh hey, we don't have our ducks in a row. We're not ready. Well, hey, guess what? We're starting. Um, but back in the day, we had this idea. It's like we should be recording these things. I knew nothing about setting this up as a live broadcast. I knew nothing about, like, well, what are we going to call it? All these different things that we started thinking about, and then we just said, you know what? Let's just do it. When do we want to do it? Well, let's do it next week. Next week? Yes, next week. Okay. And the pieces fell into place. Like what
Right.
was the first step? What was the next step? What was the next step? And then we launched in the next week.
Yeah.
So it for me, it demonstrates, as much as I know all this stuff, right? I'm supposed to do better and all that. Yes, periodically we all get caught up in our thinking that it's real, and we hold back, and it shows up like procrastination, it shows like doing nothing, it shows up like sitting on the couch. That's how it manifests itself. But there is definitely a whole new world out there when you do see, you know what, I'm going to take this step. And it is a leap of faith, like you said earlier.
Yeah, it is. There's some trusting and commitment to
Yeah.
the idea or the thing that you want to accomplish.
Yeah.
Um,
So can I put you on the spot?
You're gonna put me on the spot. I thought
Well,
we're
I'm going to put the spotlight on you. Like I came up with a list. I'm going to put everybody on the spot.
okay. Yeah,
Okay.
let's do
And
it.
you don't have to devolve the list. I mean, I'm just saying, like, take a moment after the end of this episode
Right.
and make a list of the things that you want to do or wish to do, but you have struggle attached to it.
Right. You haven't
And
taken.
just make that list. And then what's on offer is, I don't know how you want to choose, and don't overthink the choosing part. If you have to, make little pieces of paper and throw it in a bucket and just kind of swirl it around, and just say to yourself, I got to take the next, whatever it is we want to decide. I'm not going to make this a rule or anything, but the next few minutes, the next 15 minutes, the next half an hour, not a big grandioso, I'm going to take the next week at it. Just take the first step, pull something out, look at it, and just do it.
I love that. I'm doing it. And may I add another rule to that?
Sure, go ahead.
Make those items doable, like
Oh
simple.
yeah, yeah.
That,
I want to be a
yeah.
basketball star.
Create a whole movie channel. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
a small doable action steps, because that is where starting and doing and paving, that new pathway starts. It doesn't have to be a very big action. You just want to do it. Is in the doing and in the repetition that
yeah,
you're going to wire in that action. I love that. I love that you gave us an action step.
yeah. And
True fashion, in true coaching fashion.
in a true coaching fashion, report back.
Love
Whenever you do it, you don't have to do it right away, but I encourage you to explore this idea, and then come back and make a comment or email us. Our email addresses are in our bios, and our links are on our pages that this is being broadcast to. We love to hear what you are discovering, what insights you're getting
how
about
this is
this whole notion,
helping you. Yeah.
and it's helping you, right? In effortless doing. What did it feel like? How did and could you expand that in other areas of your life
Right.
and
Well,
make things more effortless, including your relationships? All these different things. So many good spin-offs.
another big conversation, right? Well, I know what's going to go on that list. Sorting through my kids' artwork, one of the cans that I've been kicking,
Yeah.
filing bills, folding laundry. There's 3 items I'm going to put in there. I may add to it. I'll
Okay.
report back.
All right. That's excellent. That's excellent. So, yeah, thank you. I think this has been a great conversation.
Thank you.
Um,
Good to
if
see you.
anybody has any comments, please leave them in the chat room, or like I said earlier, email. Um,
And stay
and
tuned. We have a few guests coming up. We're really excited
oh,
about. We're like starting to create a lineup of really, really amazing people coming on the show.
well,
So
and
very
there's something there, right there. I'll just expand a little bit, but like we said, part of our rebranding was that we wanted to bring more diversity into our conversations and invite different people doing different things, and it gives us an opportunity to learn, what's out there, and you know how much when you think about the effort that we put into that, like how many people have already come back and said, like what do we got, like 18 people that have said, something like that. It was like in a very short period of time.
yeah.
It's almost like, wow, now we got all these, now what do we do? It's like, so we're working on it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, we're working on it, and it's
yeah.
gonna really add to the show. And I'm looking forward to learning from a lot of these people. So
Oh, and getting to know these
yeah,
people,
yeah,
this is the exciting part for me, is meeting new people, right?
yeah.
Meeting, yeah, yeah. So thanks, Don. Appreciate your comments. Um,
It's so good to be here and listen to both of you. It's just what I needed. Thank you, Fatih and Rick. Really, you're so welcome, Don. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We will see you next week. Subscribe, stay tuned because we're about to launch our podcast. It's
yes,
coming. We're
yes.
working. It's almost
One
done.
step,
It's
yeah, one step at
almost
a.
ready.
It's
Yes,
almost there.
almost ready.
All
Yes,
right.
we're ready
Good to
for
see you again, Fatih.
and ask us questions if you have any questions. Bye, everyone. See you next week.
Bye now.